almost a full year before the general election in November. How did Hillary know then that Trump had to be destroyed? Here's how. Because evil knows stuff. Satan and the demons correctly intuited Trump was a danger to them. You know, there are really 4 phases to this whole Russiagate coup against Trump, and you really have to understand the timeline to really ask the most pressing question. Yeah, and it's a question that, I got to say, looking around, watch all the social media stuff, no one's really asked this question, and it's pretty revealing. But first, let's get to the timeline. Phase 1, June 2015 until January of 2016. That's about the time that, from the time Trump announced and came down the escalator and all that business, until the beginning of the primary season. Then phase 2 is essentially January 2016 to about March 2016. That's the beginning of the primary season, but it's also when Hillary started kind of envisioning her plot and sort of laying that out. Then there's phase 3 from March 2016 until August 2016, where Trump goes on to win the GOP nomination, and Hillary, okay, now she's got the plot going into high gear. It's really activating now. And then there's phase 4 from November of 2016 till practically all of 2019, which was the undermining of Trump 1.0. So let's go back to the beginning of it here. Trump announces as he descends that famous golden escalator in 2015 and goes into Trump Tower, goes in the little corner of the Trump Tower and says, I'm going to run for president. It was so far-fetched, in fact, that he was going to run for president, that his candidacy was the constant butt of jokes on late-night TV and virtually everywhere else. So when Ann Coulter was on Bill Maher's show a couple of weeks later, and remember, this is 2015, not 2016, and she got asked, well, what do you think about Trump and all of that stuff? Well, she says, I think he's got the best shot. And when she said that, again, 2015, year and a half before the election, the panel and the audience blew up in uproarious laughter. See if you remember this.
Which Republican candidate has the best chance of winning the general election?
Of the declared ones, right now, Donald Trump.
Yep. Well, 6 months went by, and without a single 2016 primary vote being cast yet, Hillary and her minions got to work against Trump. And this is to the point, only Trump. And there were 17 candidates. They zoomed in on Trump before a single vote had been cast. And in early 2016, as the primaries were just getting underway, Trump was not a shoo-in, not by a mile. He was definitely making waves, of course, with his bombastic style. Remember, like Little Marco and, Jeb Bush, like a ball of fire and all that and everything. But it wasn't until about 6 months later that it became clear he was going to lock down that nomination. And now, let's shift, if we want to do that now, and shift our attention to the second phase, when Hillary starts imagining her plot and then putting meat on the bones of that plot. We now know from all the classified documents being made public that this is when the plot against Trump by Hillary's campaign first started taking form, way back. And then by the summer, it would be joined by Obama and his team by lying to the courts to get those spying search warrants and all that stuff, and then leaking all these huge lies to the media. But at first, in those very early days, it was just Hillary and her campaign, and it was just Trump they were focused on, almost a full year before the general election in November. How did Hillary know then that Trump had to be destroyed? Here's how. Because evil knows stuff. Satan and the demons correctly intuited Trump was a danger to them. Evil doesn't know the future like God does. Only God is outside of time and knows everything. But Satan, they're not, Satan and his devils, they're not God. They're just creatures. But they are far more intelligent than humans will ever comprehend. They can look at the present, certain circumstances and events, and see how things are unfolding. And then with their angelic minds, remember, they're still angels, even though they're fallen angels. They didn't lose their angelic nature. They still have an incredible amount of intelligence, which is how they trick us all the time. They figure out, they reason to likely outcomes and likely possibilities. Evil understood. Trump was the threat. And that ought to reveal an awful lot to us humans down here. Coming to you from Houston, Texas, I'm Gary Michael Voris. God love you.